Oh, I got his ass now.
Where's the exit? Where's the exit?
There's nothing
Hello community, and welcome on this journey through hysteria we're about to go on. We're gonna do this in multiple parts. This is part 1, so we'll focus mainly on Hitman 1 targets. The closest we position them to the left, the better or worse they are, depending on the category. As for this moment, I will not be ranking any elusive targets that are currently unavailable and cannot be played in Hitman 3. However, I may cover them in the next part using a mod or so. Also, I'm judging them based on both gameplay as well as the overall atmosphere, the presentation if you will, and I'll also be showing footage while talking about them. With that out of the way, let's get to the ranking. There's more Hitman 2016 elusive targets than Hitman 2 and Hitman 3 combined, so this is bound to be fun. As for the categories, top of course is for the best, decent is for more middle of the road targets, only with equipment are for the targets that should only be played with tools or disguises, and the bloody awful is for targets with no redeeming qualities whatsoever. And the last category of course is self-explanatory. Starting with the Pharmacist, a blonde female selling fucked up medication. I just can't help but wonder who they could have based it on. Anyways, she's rather decent. If you know the map well, there's a couple of spots where you can take her out suit only default loadout like you would back in 2016. However, at the same time, she's very RNG when it comes to parts of her loop. There is no way to know how long she's going to spend in the room waiting for Dahlia before she heads off, or if she will make her way onto the terrace or stand under the chandelier. You really can't prepare too well for her, she's kind of chaotic. Of course, with modern Hitman 3 gadgets, she can be a walk in the park, if you know what you're doing. So as far as gameplay goes, she isn't bad at all. The lore is not the best, but it is decent. It's the classic premise of a target making their way to a deal. Exchange of some kind where you need to pick them off before they're done. Overall, I would say she's pretty decent. Then of course is Mr. Bieber himself, the sensation. Where do I begin with this guy? This is one of those elusive targets they made back in 2016 because they were starving for content and needed to get players to buy the game. But make no mistake about it, this guy is dreadful. The only real way you had is to dress up as a waiter and poison his drink. That's about it. Now you can mess around with thematic tools to force him to go to the bathroom and such, but he's such a bore. He's just circling around the same area non-stop, filled with people all around, no music playing, no nothing. Most NPCs are duplicates, you see two of the same NPCs standing right next to one another. One of the most uninspired elusive targets ever made, no doubt about it. Awful in the gameplay department, awful in the story and the scenery department, put together at the last moment with a gaff of tape and released just to give you something to do back in 2016, an elusive target that has truly earned its place at the bottom of this list. The Broker. I have mixed feelings about him. He's very RNG, extremely RNG. He's got like 6 different loops from the beginning, making it impossible to create a consistent way to deal with him unless you use emeric tools. Your only real options back in 2016 would have been electrocuting him with the puddle, or if you got lucky and got an easy loop, you can just coin destruct him into the bathroom and kill him there. Also, with him having a bonus objective, which is the Ivory White, located in Dahlia's private room, and the key for it is in Dahlia's laptop room, which are both accessible enough suit only or with a disguise. His bodyguard does not react to coin destructions, so it can be easy luring him, but still, I am not a fan of the randomized loop, it's such a pain in the ass, and it really destroys this elusive target's chances of being anything better than mid. As much as I find it funny that they made an egghead elusive target with a bonus objective of stealing an egg, the random loop they gave him is an absolute nightmare, so I can't give it anything better than that. Next up is the Forger. He's pretty decent. Unlike the other ones, the RNG elements are minimum, and you're able to create a route that is repeatable and works well. He can be killed with fiber wire suit only, rather easy, but you can also poison him, push him off a balcony, you can do quite a bit with this target. He does move around quite a bit, but it's always in isolated areas, or at least somewhat isolated areas, so you almost always have an opportunity to strike. Some people may argue that he's a little too easy, but I would rather have too easy than impossibly difficult, especially when it comes to elusive targets because you have no saves, and you also can't really restart after you've killed them. Overall, I would argue he's one of the best elusive targets coming out of Paris, and for that, I will put him where he belongs, at the top of the list. He really is a breath of fresh air. Next up is one of my favorites, the anonymous Black Hat. The Black Hat is interesting. He hangs out in a very small room, which is in a heavily protected area up in the attic. I do somewhat like the location. It is very unique in the comparison to all the other Paris elusive targets, and good god is there a lot of them. You do have multiple different ways you can get to him. Once you enter the room, you can poison his jam, kill him that way, or you can just wait for him to take a piss and firewire him. There is no shortages of ways to maneuver that room because the guard is the only enforcer. Both the target and his friends aren't, so there is a lot of things you can do. Also, he's not too difficult nor too easy to eliminate. He's very consistent, you don't have to worry about any RNG bullshit like some of the others, so I would put him up there as one of the better elusive targets we've had so far. He definitely is one of my favorites. Next up is the Paparazzo, and this is where we have to ask the question, can an elusive target be too easy? And if the answer is yes, is that a good or a bad thing? Because this guy is by far the easiest elusive target ever made. That's not up to debate, a single coin distraction and he's fully isolated in about 1 minute 30. But even without any distractions, this guy's whole gimmick is he's trying to make his way into a trespassing area. So he will isolate himself or put himself in a position where a single distraction will isolate him completely. There is a guard walking around behind him, but he won't cause you any heartache as long as you're careful. There isn't anything too interesting about this particular target, he's pretty forgettable to say the least. He feels more like a tutorial elusive target than the real thing, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing, and because of that I will put him as pretty decent. Blackmailer is up next. The Blackmailer as an elusive target is very much middle of the road. He can be killed easily with a simple con distraction with a little bit of patience, sound assassin suit only, or you can take a disguise and poison a drink for him. He's pretty average, he isn't great, he's not terrible either, he's just okay. Nothing to lose your mind over necessarily, at least when it comes to the gameplay department. He does have some interesting dialogue and a very unique look, and his loop does take place in a somewhat unique environment around the models backstage and with the podium. So he is somewhat memorable at least, which can't be said about a lot of these Paris elusive targets. And the second objective is to pick up the data drive that he carries, which is very simple after you eliminated him. The good thing about him, I guess, is that anyone can do him, no matter of your skill level or unlockables. As long as you have patience, an opportunity will arise, so I guess he does deserve to be put as at least an average elusive target. Next up, the identity thief, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. And when it comes to gameplay, I have to say, this guy is actually pretty decent. You can electrocute him, poison his drink, push him off a balcony, drop a chandelier on his head, fiberwire him like I did, and I'm sure there's a lot more ways to deal with him. He sort of roams around the entire palace up and down, so there's quite a bit you can do with him, but he's also a very unmemorable target. There really isn't anything too special about him lore-wise to make you remember him, and since Paris has 9 elusive targets, you tend to forget most of them rather quickly. An underrated elusive target for sure. The amount of options you have to take him down, both suit only and with disguises, are a lot more than most. He definitely deserves a place right at the top.
Woo! This is all. Woo!
Moving on from there onto the chef, and we're back to RNG. This guy has multiple different loops he can have as a start. However, one very consistent strategy is to wait for him in the bathroom and perform a coin or sing distraction. He does have a guard and 2 female NPCs following him. However, to my knowledge, he's the only one who reacts to lures and distractions, and they never follow him in the bathroom. So that is a very safe and easy place for a suit-only Sound Assassin Fiberwire or a drowning kill. Outside of that, you can always pick up a disguise and poison one of the food he tests, though you can do it suit-only too, I guess, if you wanted to. Overall, even though the RNG element makes him a bit unpredictable, as long as you have patience, all strategies will work in due time. You just have to wait for him to get into position. He is memorable enough elusive target, and the palace is changed quite a bit with the way NPCs are placed around it, so I'm willing to put him into the decent tier. Up next, finally moving away from Paris, we have the Deceivers from Sapienza. Possibly the absolute worst example of RNG. Starting with the Congressman, he's the one in Silvio's mansion. His loop is completely random. There is no way to know where it will begin from or where it will head to next. He can go into the library, the fireplace or the basement, and there is no way to know where he'll go next when his loop is finished in the first place. It takes forever waiting for him, and also he has 3 NPCs following him, though his 2 guards are not enforcers to you no matter what you are wearing. By far the easiest and most reliable kill is just to make your way into the basement and put poison into the glass of wine. Any other method is far too unpredictable. The Guru on the other hand isn't a ton better. He can be poisoned early on with a disguise or pick a bullet into a toilet if you place your only. You can also drop a chandelier on his head and of course use whatever emetic gadgets you want. It's so ridiculous having to deal with a random loop for an elusive target. You have no saves, no restarts if you complete an objective. It's the worst time to force that type of playstyle, and if you're running default loadout, it can be extremely frustrating having to deal with them. So for that reason, I'm putting the Congressman in the equipment only category, because lethal poison is by far the best way to deal with him, no doubt about it. And the Guru at the bottom of decent, because he's far more doable and gives you a lot more of a reliable route. The Twin is up next, the big gimmick of this one being that they're dressed the same way, but one of them has bought himself a watch that seemingly the other one can't afford.
And if I want to wear a Rolex watch, you haven't got one, you understand? Ha ha!
This is one of these targets where disguise or suit only doesn't really matter. It doesn't give you any particular benefits. However, what does matter is having some sort of a gadget, because although default loadout is possible, it is very tricky to pull off. The NPCs act in a very strange behavior, and it tends to be very unpredictable how things will turn out. With enough persistence, you can beat a default loadout like you see me do, but I would highly advise you to use whatever tools you have available to you, because it will make things much quicker and easier. Back in 2016, when people weren't very experienced with coin lures and didn't have any tools from Hitman 3, this was by far one of the worst elusive targets to go up against. However, now, in Hitman 3, with the right tools and skill, you can deal with them rather quickly. He's still not a good elusive target, he's absolutely awful, but with the right gadgets, he's just doable enough. The Prince. Yeah, this elusive target goes straight into the garbage can, no ifs or buts about it. Not only does it have random loop elements, but it's so ridiculously overcrowded with guards. They are everywhere and there is no spot for hiding bodies. Never before has an elusive target given you so many limitations. The church is not a good area, not a fun area. The tight corridors overfilled with guards, no place to move, no place to hide bodies. NPCs constantly moving all over the place. It's an extremely difficult mission, with or without a disguise, with or without an equipment. This is very difficult elusive target to beat. I can genuinely say that I can't remember how long it's been since I've been this frustrated and pissed off at a mission. Now, of course, if you're an expert, I'm sure you can find shortcuts and tricks to get around it, but for a regular person, this is by far one of, if not the worst elusive targets in Hitman history. I hate when IO basically looks at every possible way that a player could execute a mission successfully and goes out of their way to prevent them from being able to do it, placing a ridiculously large number of guards in a very small area and blocking all entries and exit points, and of course, they have to give them randomized loops so there is no way to plan accordingly, forcing you to operate in complete fucking chaos. Next up is Bad Boy. Those of you who've played Watch Dogs get the reference, the rest of you are probably confused as hell. But that's okay, let's move on to this guy. This elusive target is the epitome of what the fuck. His loop is standing still and playing games for 10 minutes, and then he heads out for autographs. If you have a disguise, you can poison his water, and also, suit only, you can blow up his car and lure him over there to take him down like you see in the video. But it's very tricky. This is one where I'll strongly recommend you to use medic tools like grenade, briefcase or seeker to get him, because otherwise it can be very risky. I mean, it's still very risky, but it's a lot more doable. Not a good target in my point of view, definitely doable with default loadout, but very chaotic and very difficult. Just the lack of options when it comes to taking him down really does annoy me. Still, there is a way to take him down default loadout, so I'll put him on okay, but he really is on the edge of it. The Entertainer? Oh boy, here we go. Mr. Giggles. Definitely a very difficult target, one of the absolute worst of 2016. Again, we are dealing with a very small roof, overcrowded with guards and NPCs. He has a very chaotic loop, impossible to predict, which can lead to many problems where sometimes he'll just do something that makes absolutely no sense at all and really makes you question your own sanity. There is a place to hide bodies, but you have to be extremely careful to not get spotted. And although I just recently showed a strategy on how to beat him Fiberwire default loadout suit only, I'll be the first to admit that that's not the easiest one I've done. And if dealing with him is not bad enough, we also have his assistant roaming around the Shisha Cafe that we need to take down as well. If you have a disguise, you can rat poison her drink and get it that way, or suit only, you can use a coin lure, bolt into the private room if you've already got the key, or you can also get her into the toilet, so there are ways to deal with her as well. However, it is one of the more convoluted targets out there. Luckily, in Hitman 3, if you have your hermetic grenades, native gum, etc., you can dispatch them rather easily, but if you don't, then well, it may get a little rough. I would definitely say he belongs in the equipment only category. Up next, we have the Angel of Death. This is a serial killer done right. The lore of this particular target is awesome, the dialogue is awesome, and the small details are phenomenal. However, when it comes to the gameplay, it's a little flimsy. For starters, the overwhelming amount of guards and also their placement is something I'm just not a very big fan of, especially the two guards right in front of the pipe. They're positioned in such a way that it's almost impossible to get by them without a tranquilizer, which wasn't available back in Hitman 1. It's just another showcase of IO making things much harder than they need to be just to fuck with their players. Eventually, she will start to make her way around the city, and she will bring with her, and this is not a joke, a total of 4 guards. How the fuck are you supposed to deal with that? 4 guards around her at all times. There are some accident kill opportunities, but really not that many. Still, there are enough opportunities to take her down, both suit only and with disguises if you're able to pull them off, so I can't say she's awful, but at the same time she's not great either. Middle of the road at best. Off to the Gunrunner, an extremely forgettable target. In the parking garage, overfilled from top to bottom with armed soldiers, your only real way of dealing with him outside of using medic tools is causing an evacuation and putting guns down to distract the guards on the way back. There aren't even that many accident kill possibilities that are available unless you're able to lure him next to a car and blow him up, which by the way is not that easy to do. He isn't too difficult, you can kill him, default loadout, shoot only fiberwire, all that stuff, or use some disguise to get close enough to lure him next to a car. But he's so limited as a target that honestly, once you're done with him, you have no interest whatsoever in exploring and trying new things. There just isn't much to do with this one. Still, an okay target, but very unmemorable. The Food Critic. This is a very low effort elusive target to say the least. He basically sits in a chair the entire time and only goes to the kitchen every now and again to see a cake. If you are wearing a disguise, there is quite a bit of possibilities. From blowing him off, pushing him off a balcony, you have your options. Suit only, there isn't any legit way to get it, but as always, the creative Hitman community always figures out the most mind-boggling ways for you to achieve things. This time, it's a pistol distraction that has him walk all the way to the upper floor, completely isolating him and allowing you to do a fiber wire on him if you choose to do so. Suit only with default loadout is possible, and of course if you use medic devices there are quite a bit of possibilities as well. Overall, this is a target that is very doable no matter what your preferred playstyle is, as long as you know how to do him. And even though it's not a very memorable one, because of just the laziness of his creation, the gameplay can be rather fun and also really fast. But the lore and loop is so boring that honestly I would just put him on okay. Up next, please like and subscribe, is the Chameleon. This is not necessarily a difficult target on its own, but the map is very difficult. The upper floor with the hackers is very active with a lot of movement, so it's very hard to predict where people will go and what they will do. It can be quite tricky to do a default loadout as you saw from the intro, but if you have a tranquilizer it becomes way easier for sure. Still, it is beatable default loadouts with only fiberwire as well as with disguises if you want to make it easier. Overall, there isn't anything too special about the Chameleon. He only sits around in that small hacking room, and if you take out the hackers, he'll go to the balcony for an easy accident kill. I would say when it comes to elusive targets on Colorado, one of the most difficult map of the series, it definitely isn't anywhere near as difficult as it could be, and that's not a bad thing, it's actually pretty decent. Up next we have a Bookkeeper. The gimmick of this elusive target is he basically inspects the militia. He goes to 4 places in total: the hacker's nest on the upper floor of the mansion, the explosives range, the demolition barn, and also the main exit point. It's a consistent loop that just keeps on rolling, and it tends to be completely random just like the congressman, so it can be very annoying trying to come up with a consistent route. I'm sure shoot only fiberwire is possible, but even I could not be bothered to do it. With 4 guards all around him at all times and the difficulty of Colorado, this is one of those targets that you should really go after only when you have the right equipment. It's not an awful target, it's a simple taser, coin, combo, or just an explosive can take him down for an easy sound assassin. But then you have to go upstairs and unlock the safe that his ledger is in, and by the way, there is no key available on the map to unlock that safe, meaning that if you don't have a lockpick you better find yourself a crowbar. Luckily, it's not too far away. Overall, this target, although having some really awesome dialogue, does fall kind of flat in the gameplay department, but as long as you have some basic tools you should be able to take him down rather quickly. Now we're moving to Hokkaido for the Surgeons. So for these guys you have 2 options. If you want to do a suit only, it's best to have a loadout, so you have to be over level 20. If you aren't, you can use disguises and still get them rather easy. They are both very isolatable, though the female target is much better because her loop is more constant, while the male target's loop is completely random so you never quite know how to prepare for it. The bonus requirement of killing them with syringes really annoys me because of the syringe's location, and also it just limits you for no real reason. Still, they are doable and to be fair not that difficult, even though I'm not the biggest Hokkaido fan. I gotta say, I really did enjoy these targets. I would even go as far as to say the female target is one of the best of Hitman 1. However, because of the randomness of the male target's loop, he's only going into decent. And finally, mercifully, the final elusive target of the video, the Fugitive. This target's whole gimmick is you don't know who the target is. But one easy way to find out is to knock them out and try to hide the body. If you can't, that means that's the target. They're definitely very prone to accident kills as well, so you don't necessarily need a loadout. If you want to do a shoot only, but you don't have a loadout, all you need to do is just wait around for Diana to tell you, and then with some basic map knowledge, you can get yourself an easy accident kill. Though that may definitely take you quite a bit of time. If you pick a disguise, you can go into the director's office, default loadout, and find out for sure. But again, you'll be forced to wait around for an opportunity to strike, which may take a bit. The best scenario would be by far to go into this one with a loadout. Not only will it make it much faster, but also a lot more reliable, since if you by any chance screw up and get caught, after you found the identity, you gotta do it all over again, or just kill the same guy over and over again until you get lucky. There are quite a bit of possibilities, but I would definitely recommend you to use a loadout if you have it, so I'll have to put them into the only with equipment option. And with that, we've come to the end of part 1. This truly was a lot of work to put together, so if you enjoyed, a like and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. Also, feel free to let me know how you would rank them in the comments below. Until next time, thank you very much for watching.